anything in life, if it's homesteading, if it's building a business, if it's having a baby, learning a new trade, if it's learning hobbies in the kitchen, like it's the step to take as a parent to bring your child in and to make it an educational opportunity. We can choose to do that or not do that. And that's for a homeschooling parent or a non-homeschooling parent. I'm like, hey, this is already our life. Let's teach them about becoming an entrepreneur.
Right.
Let's teach them about what it means for mommy to be on a podcast. Let's show them what it looks like to build a house. You're giving them more opportunities than they could ever receive having a one-size-fits-all education because you're just bringing them into life. And these are the things we're learning.
My name is Lisa, mother of 8 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. Join me as I share with you my love for creating a handmade home from scratch cooking and a little mom and entrepreneur life along the way. All right, welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Today we're having on a popular guest that has been on before, Lyndsey from Treehouse Schoolhouse. She is a homeschooling mom who shares curriculum, encouragement, practical tips for homeschooling. This is going to be an awesome conversation, especially you might think, well, why right now? It's summer. Well, she has some tips on how to keep that rhythm going throughout the summer. So we're going to talk a bit about that as well. Well, thank you, Lyndsey, for coming back on the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you. We're going to talk about homeschooling and rhythms during the summer. And then Lyndsey and I were chatting about life stuff before this, how we both have a similar situation in that our husbands work side by side with us. And that's more of a new thing for you, correct? So you're probably like in a new world of navigating that whole situation.
Absolutely. And it's been this whole transition. It wasn't just overnight. We were trying baby steps going back and forth because he had his own business. So it's been a slowly like letting go and trusting more and leaning and seeing how it would all work out. So yeah, it's definitely a whole new world.
Yeah. So for those who didn't hear the last episode or who don't know you, which many do in my niche because a lot of us do homeschool, tell the listeners about yourself and your curriculum and your online mission and presence and all of that.
So, hey, if you don't know me, I'm Lyndsey. I have a business called Treehouse Schoolhouse. It started as a little Instagram to kind of show our homeschool journey. I have 4 kids, ages 3 to 11. And my husband and I are both entrepreneurs. We have home-based businesses. We homeschool. We're all about life at home. And so about 7 years ago, when we were starting our homeschool journey, I started sharing on Instagram and things. And from there, I started a blog. And then after that, I started developing resources for homeschool families. And now I have a full team working behind the scenes with me. And I have a YouTube channel that is just sort of new. We have an Instagram, we have a blog, and we have a lot of homeschool resources and curriculum.
Yeah. So just a little bit going on. And then not only that, but your husband and you designed and built your house. So to what extent were you involved in that process? Because whenever I tell my husband that I know people who built their own houses, he's like, but like, did they do it all? Like how? Because it's very impressive. Like I guess as somebody who doesn't have any background in that, it's hard for us to even understand how you would know what to do when doing something like that.
So my husband is the kind of person that's like, hey, we have a dream and we're willing, let's do something different. Let's do something hard to get there. And so I'm usually like, I'm good at the dreaming part, but when it gets down to the nitty gritty, he's like the details guy. So we're a good partnership in that. But
yeah,
basically, a few years ago, we didn't have the money to buy our dream home. We didn't have the money to even flip a home. We couldn't find anything that would make sense financially to like buy it, renovate it, and make it what we really wanted. At the end of the day, we would have been really far out from community to be able to afford it. And so we kind of in faith bought a piece of property in our favorite historic town. It's just 1.5 acres, but it backs up to like 10 acres of woods. And it is walking distance to this really cute historic downtown that has like parades and antique shops and all my favorite things.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's on the outskirts of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so we bought the property and then we were like, well, we don't know when we'll be able to do anything with it, but we just bought it to see. And we got into an RV situation. We were trying to do that. It didn't work out. We moved back into our old house. I mean, it's been like 5 years of nonsense and craziness. But finally, about 2 years ago, we actually broke ground and my husband decided that the way that we could actually afford to do this would be for him to get his general contractor's license and basically manage the entire project.
Okay.
And so with my business growing, he was able to become the general contractor. Now, that doesn't mean that he actually put the roof on and he actually did all of the plumbing. He hired out the things that weren't his specialty, but he does have some construction experience. His actual career was building cabinets. So any trim, doors, windows, we have a lot of built-in cabinets. We have like really beautiful trim because that's his thing. So all of that he did himself. And basically each thing he kind of decided like, hey, is it worth my time to work, make money, and pay for someone to do this? Or should I like learn on YouTube and then try it myself?
Right.
And so basically piece by piece, that's what he did.
Yeah.
My hand in all of it was, of course, the design. So behind the scenes, I was designing every room and picking all the colors and, you know, working with the floor plan. We did buy a floor plan, but I like knocked this wall out, changed that, made that bigger.
Yeah. You basically changed the whole floor plan.
Basically, I changed a whole bunch of it. That's what I would do with
the floor plan.
But you need to have, I mean, it felt good to like have some sort of starting space because these people think about the details that you wouldn't think about like, oh, you need a bathroom above where like for the plumbing or so it was nice to have like something to start with. But really, it was just me, Pinterest, and a lot of coffee. And I had a friend who wants to be a designer. And she was like, hey, I'll meet you like once a week and we'll sit and it'll force you to like make decisions. And so we would meet at a coffee shop once a week and she would just like go through my Pinterest and say, okay, we need to order lights. We need to do this. I think one of the trickiest parts is that the loan, you know, comes in batches. And so you can't just like when you have time, buy everything. And where are you going to store it?
You have to.
It's like you have to wait. And then you go back and you're like, hey, those things aren't on sale anymore. Okay, I got to change my vision. Or something comes in, you hang it up and you're like, I hate that. Now I've got to figure out what else to do. So basically the last 18 months, we moved in January, the last 18 months before that.
Okay, so you're fairly new to this.
Oh yeah. And we basically got our license to move in as quick as possible. So we still have a lot of projects that we're doing every day. You know, we're still completing a lot of things. So we're somewhat living in a construction zone, but we made sure to prioritize the things that really mattered for like efficiency and being able to like live here, you know?
Yeah. I saw a reel on Instagram where she was saying like the most misconception about a new house is that you're going to move in and there's not going to be any projects because it's new. And she's like, actually, like it's the opposite of that. I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay.
I think it depends. You know, I think when people, I mean, originally, I was like, we want it to be turnkey because we've always lived in construction zones. But when it came down to it, we were renting. We were just so tired of being in our small rental house. And we were like, you know what? And my husband's really good at giving me the ability to say like, this matters more to me than this. So work on this first and then we can wait on that. And so he's constantly just kind of working through that list, but it's been such a good journey for all of us. I mean, if you would have asked me that last year, I would have been like crying on your shoulder, but now that we're in, that we're in, I'm like, you know what? In retrospect, this was an amazing experience for my kids. This was a lot of what their homeschooling looked like the last year.
Yes,
a lot of what they learned,
awesome.
Real life skills, learning how to be patient, learning how to be content in difficult circumstances, learning a lot about money in the process and waiting.
Yeah.
You know, and then we now have something that we really couldn't imagine a different house. Like we literally designed it. So it's like everything that matters to us, we get to have now. And sometimes you have to do really hard things to get something that you really want. So
yeah. And that's a life lesson in itself. And so I think that does tie very nicely into homeschool. I could see that being there's so many things about the home building process that I realize I know nothing about. It's not something I've ever really paid much attention to. There's a lot of moving parts, like you said, like looking at a floor plan and trying to figure out where things should go, like not just where your brain thinks they should go, but like practically where they should go. Yeah. I think that's all something that most people don't know much about. So, okay, you do some form of homeschool year round, correct? Like you're not going to take some summer break. Tell us a little bit about that, like your rhythms with your kids throughout the school year.
Yeah. So this sort of happened like on accident, but now that we're doing it this way, I just can't imagine a different way. And it's probably because we take on a lot in our lives. Like my husband and I both just like to be involved in a lot of things. We like to host a lot of people. We like to travel. We both have businesses. And so we're a busy family, you know? And so homeschooling is not the only thing that we carry. And so because of that, also in the last in our whole homeschooling journey, I continued to have children. So there were seasons where I'm exhausted or nursing or the baby's sick or whatever. And so it just was like, oh, well, if the baby's coming, I'm going to have to take a month off in October because the baby's coming. And the last end of my pregnancy, I don't want to be doing school every day. And then all that postpartum. Okay, well, then we'll just push it into one more month in the summer. And then that turned to 2 months. And then it was just like, why are we even stopping? Like, this is more stressful to try to fit all of our schoolwork
stop.
in that time. It's more stressful. And the more that you get into your homeschooling rhythms, I feel like your kids just know this is life.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we do. Like, this is what the rhythms of our day look like. It's not stressful. It's normal. And so to stop and start would kind of like make it harder.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have a routine, and your kids are home all day long. And if you don't have some sort of structure or routine or rhythm, like, now I understand, like, we'll take entire batches off in the summer, just like we do in the fall or just like we do in the spring. Like, that's the beauty of homeschooling year round for us, is that it's more taking like a short amount of time and trying to shove all your work into that and just spreading it out. So we don't do homeschooling on Fridays.
Right.
If we want to take a half a day, we'll take it off, whatever, things like that.
It leaves you a lot of flexibility. Actually, today I was at a play group with some friends and we were talking about it. And I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but basically, actually, no, it's coming out like very soon. So we were talking, they're asking each other like, oh, when's your last day of school? When's your last day of school? Because we're all homeschool moms. And I was kind of saying, we kind of just do like a more flexible approach, but year round, as opposed to, like you said, like fitting it all in, because there are times whenever we take off for this or that. And then if you just kind of do it throughout the year a little bit more casually, it gives you more time to afford you being a bit more casual with some of the lessons. I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And I also love like the rhythm of things that you can learn in the summer that you wouldn't be learning in the other seasons. We focus a lot on nature. And so in the summer, we're going to be going to the beach, but we're going to be learning about seashells. We're going to just continue the way that we do education in the summer with all the summer things that are happening. And so it's just like a natural. And then we're also showing our kids like, hey, learning is all the time and everywhere. And we lean into education in all of our life.
Yes. That's one of the main things I was thinking when you were saying this is the way that we homeschool, or the way that at least I want our homeschool to feel, is that learning is a lifelong process. It's not shoved into 18 years or whatever, age 6 through 18. It's not shoved into 13 years. It's not something that you do for, oh my goodness, I just totally did math wrong in front of everybody. 12 years. Either way.
Oh, I didn't even catch it.
I said, I'm like 6 to 18, 13 years. And I'm like, wait, I'm going backtracking here. People are gonna be like, you're not qualified. No, trust me, I do know this math problem. But anyways, I want them to know that it's not something that has to start and stop. Like, sure, there are certain things that, I hope that they're not having to do a math lesson every morning. But just learning in general, I've learned more, probably for sure, in the last 18 years of my life, since I've been out of school, or 20 years, whatever, than I did in school, because I'm continually interested in new things and trying new things and failing. And that's just been a part of my life. And it didn't end when I, finished senior year or college.
Right.
So how does your daily or weekly rhythm change during the summer months? You talked about maybe taking off a week for vacation, or what does a typical day look like?
So a typical day looks like this year round, but like in the winter, we are in more. And so in the winter, we're going to be doing longer read alouds, or we're going to be more intentional with handcrafts or things like that. So maybe there's a little bit less in the summer, but generally our daily rhythm sort of looks the same. So over breakfast, we are reading the Bible. My husband leads them in Bible, and they do some sort of devotional where we kind of go through different resources. And so I consider that kind of the beginning of our school day. After breakfast, they do their home chores. And so that happens year round. They're going to be getting, dressed for the day. They're going to be doing their piano lesson, just things like that. And then in the summer, we may say, hey, we got invited to go to the pool at 10 o'clock. So I want you to get this much schoolwork done then we can go to the pool, and maybe when we get home, we'll wrap some up, or maybe we'll just do read alouds at night or something. I pretty much don't say no to those opportunities that come up, especially we have family who don't homeschool. So most of our friends homeschool, but my sister and her children, they do not homeschool. And so they're always inviting us to do summer activities, summer sleepovers with the cousins, or, you know, go to the lake for the day. And I pretty much will prioritize that all of the time.
Same.
And then I just try to fit in, you know, my work and our school all around those things. So they're not missing out on that. But that is the same that's true in the fall, like I'm trying to explain. And in the spring, when the weather is beautiful and we wake up one day and we're like, the birds are chirping. We don't want to be inside sitting and doing school today. Let's pack a picnic. We'll do a little bit of school in the car or whatever, and then we're going to go enjoy this day. So schooling year round gives us that flexibility, you know?
Yes.
So if we are staying home on a summer day, though, we would probably do our chores, maybe do a little bit of schoolwork. And then I would be like, hey, we're going to get outside till it gets too hot. And the kids would go play outside, maybe through lunch. And then when it's the hottest part of the day, because we live in the Carolinas, it gets really hot in the afternoon. I would say, well, now let's come back in and we'll wind down, shower off from all the crazy outside play, and then we'll do a little school in the afternoon, wrap up with dinner and the normal nighttime things. So you just switch around when you do your schoolwork. And I think because our kids have been doing this for so long, it's nothing new for me to say, hey, we're going to spend the whole day outside. And so if we do that, that means when we get home, we have to sit down and do our schoolwork for like an hour. And they'll agree to it. Like, okay, yeah, we want to go do that. So is that your same experience or similar to your life?
Oh, yeah. Yes, almost exactly. I mean, just today we had a play group at 10. And then my husband, before that, he was really like pushing with all of the kids. Okay, before we go, you need to finish your math lesson. We're going to do our read aloud part. And then probably tonight, because right now they're playing outside because it's just a beautiful day. And so we're not really worrying about that. I mean, they're all learning though, if you think about it, like while they're outside, all the learning continues on. But then tonight, whenever they come in before bed, we'll do some read aloud time too. And I'm all about that flexibility because you don't have to fit it within a certain amount of hours. That's what the whole idea of homeschooling is. Right. You can, before bed, you can do it. Before breakfast, you can do it. Our kids wake up really early, so we can get a lot done in the morning if we need to. I told my kids that we're doing math lessons year round. We're not stopping that because with math and the way it builds on it, I don't have any kids who are extremely naturally good at math. And so it needs to be reinforced. That's one thing that Yeah.
And also a tip is like, especially if someone's listening that's not homeschooling at all and you're like, well, how can you commit to sitting down with your kids for 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day? Like one of the big like light bulb moments for me a couple years ago was that I can have a list of things that my children can do without much of my help.
Absolutely.
And year round, no matter what my day looks like, no matter what chaos ensues, because I have other children or business things or house problems or whatever, my kids can work through this list that's just hitting the core things that I for sure feel like they need to get every day. And then on the days that I have that extra margin and we have that extra time and it's raining or it's cold or whatever, then I have other things that I can pull from and say, we're going to do a whole hour of this fun science thing. And I'm going to do this science thing with you, this project, or we're going to read from our history book. And then you just sort of keep looping those things around, those extra things. But on a daily basis, my older kids, no matter kind of what I'm doing, they can be wherever I am in the kitchen or whatever I'm doing, and they can pull up and they can do their lessons and they can ask me questions. And it's not maybe what you picture. You're not taking a classroom and bringing it into your house.
Right.
And trying to do that and all the other things that you do. Like that would be exhausting and impossible.
That's not really possible.
And I would need a summer break.
Right.
Yeah. And I would for sure be like, I need a summer break.
And
I think that's the mentality is people are like, wait, why would you ever do school year round? That's terrible for you. It's terrible for the kids. And I'm like, no, you're not understanding what it means. Right. It's not what you think. Because I would not be doing that.
Well, and I think it's interesting because sometimes there'll be pushback against homeschool and people will say something like, it's not right. Like, how do you have time to spend one-on-one with each of those kids? And I'm like, do you know that at school, the teacher is not spending one-on-one time with each kid. So it's not like you're trading this opportunity where they were going to have one-on-one help for all the things they do with one where they aren't going to have that. It's always a setting, like you're saying, where you're available for questions, you show them the material, and then there's always a certain level of responsibility that falls on the student's shoulders independently of the teacher. So that's okay. There's no shame in that. I think people sometimes picture it all different. Like you're going around and you're doing like a whole class presentation for all these different grades. And it's way more of a natural learning environment than that.
It is. Yeah. And not to mention with the siblings. So I have, 2 older kids and 2 younger kids, and my 2 little ones are just now learning to read. And then my 2 older ones, I put it on their work list to read to my little kids or to help them walk through their read alouds. So it's like my older kids are getting these opportunities because they're teaching. And naturally, they're going to want to step in, and they've seen how mommy does it, and so I can say, "Hey, I need to cook lunch. I want you to keep doing this lesson with your little brother," and they're learning by teaching. Yeah, and so you're giving them that opportunity as well. So it's a completely different dynamic than a school classroom, and it's a beautiful dynamic, and it doesn't feel like a burden to do it year round if you do it that way.
Yeah, yeah, and when you're talk to other homeschool families and observe, you realize this is how it is done. But do you ever get pushback on you are having your older kids help with the younger kids' lessons? I completely agree that is good for your older kids. But do you ever get pushback on that? Because I can just imagine like the comments that I would get on that on my platforms.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that it's like a forced thing. I feel like most of the time, yes, my children are leading it. My younger kids are like,
love it. Yeah.
They love it. The younger kids are like, oh, mommy's busy and I really want to read this book and mommy can't help me right now. Hey, can you help me? And it's literally like, that's how we do everything in our life and in our home.
It's like a community. Yes.
It's this community. And then my older kids, they naturally are going to want to instill something in their siblings that they love. So for example, my older son is like a history buff. Well, he's not even thinking I'm teaching my younger sibling a history lesson, but they're outside playing and he's like, hey, let's play the American Revolution. This is what happened. Okay, let's play it. And it's like, he's teaching him because he's just living it. It's not a forced, like, you are the teacher, this is your responsibility kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, 100%. Because my kids are like that too. I'll have one of my kids be like, hey, I'm taking Theodore out to do this. Like it's not like I'm like, hey, take your brother. It's just very much a community. It's a lifestyle of helping each other. And we all learn by doing that. And we all, learn human interactions by doing that. And I agree with you. And I see it in other families. And I think it's beautiful. But it gets misunderstood whenever you haven't witnessed a family at home having a day together where everything is, working together. Not to say there aren't certain little tiffs here and there, of course, but just on a regular basis, witnessing the way that a family will work together when they are together all day is maybe something a lot of people just haven't experienced.
Right. Exactly. It's a whole different lifestyle.
Yes, it sure is. I have been talking about Tubes & Co. on here for a while, and that's for good reason. I love Tubes & Co. My mom, my sister, we have a text thread, and we'll text each other whenever we're ordering Tubes & Co. just to see if anybody wants to throw anything in with our shipping, because we all love the product so much. So not only do I love their skincare, which is natural and organic, made from things like grass-fed tallow, ingredients that you recognize that you won't find on any lists of bad, toxic ingredients, small family-owned company. But I not only love their makeup or their skincare, but I also love their makeup. So with the skincare, my favorite products I use every single day, the charcoal cleansing bar. I also ran out of but love the sea buckthorn cleansing oil. The glow serum is one of my top favorites because after I cleanse and I tone with their toner, or the tonic, which is like a toner, I put on that glow serum and my face just looks youthful and hydrated, which I crave more and more now that I'm in my late 30s. For the makeup, I have their eyebrow pencil, I have their mascara, their blush, their foundation. My full face can be done naturally and organically with a company that I love, with products I love, and they actually work. They're not just healthy and without any of the good properties that you get from some of the brands that you find at the department store that have a bunch of bad ingredients, but they make you look pretty. With this one, you're not sacrificing either thing, which is what I was looking for. Toops & Co. is offering Simple Farmhouse Life listeners 10% off your order with the code FARMHOUSE. You can head over to Toops & Co. That's Toops like soups with a T. toopsandco.com. Use code FARMHOUSE. Okay, so somebody was asking how to manage the responsibilities of homemaking, homeschooling, and homesteading during the summer when garden and livestock chores ramp up. Now, I know you said you don't have a homestead, but you still have to make your home. And I think like what I'm thinking, my first instinct is with things like a homestead and gardening, there's so many learning opportunities to be had during that. Like just the kids being around you will foster so much learning. How are you able to manage all this?
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like year round for us, what we were talking about building our house last year, we were building a house. And so did our school look the same as it did the years before when we didn't have that huge thing going on in our life? It didn't, but I counted it as education and I made it education. So it's one thing to bring your kids to the job site or to bring your kids into the garden and just like have them there. It's another thing to be an intentional parent and say, hey, come here, let me show you this. And ask them questions or get books about the subject. And so then they're thinking about it. So we got books about how to build a house. We would plan ahead and my husband would say like, hey, the plumber's coming tomorrow. Do you want to bring the kids over? And we can like let them watch and we can have them ask them questions. So anything in life, if it's homesteading, if it's building a business, if it's having a baby, if it's learning a new trade, if it's learning hobbies in the kitchen, like it's the step to take as a parent to bring your child in and to make it an educational opportunity. We can choose to do that or not do that. And that's for a homeschooling parent or a non-homeschooling parent. But for me as a homeschooling parent, I'm like, hey, this is already our life. Let's teach them about becoming an entrepreneur.
Right.
Let's teach them about what it means for mommy to be on a podcast. Let's show them what it looks like to build a house. And so you're giving them more opportunities than they could ever receive having a one-size-fits-all education because you're just bringing them into life. And these are the things we're learning.
And what missed opportunities to not do certain things just because you need to finish your book work. That is one thing that I always try to remember because you have these certain expectations that people think school is this certain thing because this is what it's been my whole life. This is what school is. It hasn't been like that for all of history. But for the time that I've been alive, this is what school is. And sometimes we forget to step outside of the box a little bit and think about, well, what's the goal of school? What are we trying to have at the end of these years that our kids are under our roof? Are we really worried that they can recite? I mean, not to say those things aren't important too, but to miss an opportunity of taking a day off of school, because obviously it is school, to not work in the garden or to not go show your kids when the plumber is there, to send them off instead to read a book on historical facts that they're probably, most likely because it's in the textbook, not going to remember. But to have this one-on-one time with a plumber when most of us probably don't even know how plumbing works. Like we just flush it, it's fine, Yeah. What missed opportunities when you don't have that mindset?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's a reminder every day. It's a reminder every single day to not feel like you have to check off the lists. And that's the most important thing. Even going back to connection with family, my parents just came in or when our cousins invite us over, I prioritize that. So my parents recently came in and they were here for like 3 days during the week. And I started to freak out like, oh man, like we're going to miss 3 days of school. We were traveling, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait,
family.
My mom teaching, family, like the generation before us that aren't going to be around forever. My dad sitting and teaching my son how to play chess for hours. My mom taking my daughter out to the nursery and picking out plants. Like what? Hold on. If we were, if I was like, no, sorry, they're not available because they're doing school. Like what a silly thing. But we do that. We do that.
Or we don't take certain trips because of school. It's like, you're going to witness more on this traveling experience than any textbook. And I think it's the pressure for me personally. I 100% agree with you. And then sometimes, like you said, it's a daily reminder because you get that pressure reinstilled by certain questions and people questioning you and making you doubt yourself that that's not school, even though just think about what you actually come away from learning there, like family,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like
family, like
exactly.
People,
I know. I'm like, man, you got my heart on that one.
Yeah. But it's so true that Yeah, I have definitely seen people take homeschooling so seriously that they actually miss the learning. So what's that? You can't see the forest through the trees or something like that.
Yeah.
I have witnessed that, like, oh, we can't do that today because we have to open our textbook. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's a daily reminder, but I
Right.
think that's encouraging. So someone does ask, encouragement for those of us who are strongly considering homeschooling but are nervous. Do you think that the reason that someone is nervous is because they're picturing homeschool to be something it's not, and they haven't maybe changed their mindset about the goal of education?
Absolutely. For me, it always goes back to what is the main goal, and the main goal is not going to look the same as your neighbor. And I think, it's like, what is your family culture? What matters to you? What do you want when it's time to launch your kids into the world? What kind of children do you want? And how do you in your home create atmospheres to get there? Maybe it's having a garden and having them come alongside you. Maybe it is spending more time with family, whatever those things are. And I think when you take the pressure off of XYZ, what other people are doing, what other people are saying, it just changes. Your whole mindset changes. And so, first of all, I would say that you're the most qualified person in the world to do this job, because the qualification is not what your education degree is or whatever. It's this passion to come alongside your kids and to live life with them and to see the world as an opportunity to learn and to bring them into that. And that is, I've not met a mom who doesn't have that desire, for their kids to just experience life to the fullest, to be successful, and to launch into the world as a successful, contributing human being. Like, every mom wants that.
Right.
And I feel like that is a marker of, you're going to be successful at this. You can do this. You are qualified for this. And then just to ease in, like, don't put so much pressure on yourself that the beginning part of your journey needs to be this huge, robust, structured thing. Like, I always tell moms, like, just start getting to know your child, learn what makes them come alive, kind of restore that relationship. If your child's been in school and you're taking them from school, then there's probably a lot of learning each other that you have to do. What makes them tick, what makes them excited, and kind of start there and start chasing interests together.
I one time, a homeschool mom that I knew, she has a lot of children. She one time told me, oh, well, we took that year off, and she had some reasons like why they did. And then she told me all the things that they did. And there was a light bulb moment where I'm like, wait, you can just say that? Like, we took off, like, we just didn't do school. And of course, with all the things she said that they did, they obviously learned a ton. But she's a seasoned, older mom. She has kids on the other side of it who are successful. And so she knew that was okay. But from my young perspective of not having proof and results on the other end of it, not having grown children, it was like, wait, you can just take off like for a whole year. So like,
year?
if it's, she did. She took off a whole year. And I mean, I don't, she was around her kids. She cares about her kids. So therefore there were so many learning opportunities that she, like you said, she showed them things. I'm sure she wasn't just like, nope, we're off this year. I'm not going to explain that to you. No, she lived with her children during that year, and they probably learned as much as ever. But in her brain, in order to not overwhelm her, she just said this year we couldn't do it. There were too many things. And so she just took off. I'm like, wow, like
that's freeing.
That's freeing to know that if anything ever gets too crazy, because like somebody else asked in the audience questions, how would you go about homeschool if you're due to have a baby in September? Would you keep full school going or just stick to the basics? I think it's the same thing. Like, when it gets overwhelming, just focus on learning in the way that life presents learning. How would you answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's basically what we've done. Every time I've had a baby, towards the end of the pregnancy and the next maybe month, I just would, we'd have a few rhythms in the day that we would stay the same, like home care or reading aloud over a meal. And if I couldn't read aloud because I'm nursing a baby, there's always audiobooks. We would have a few daily rhythms so that our day had some sort of structure anyway. But then the rest of the day, I just presented them with really good books that were all around. My kids love to read. I'm like seeing them pick up books, seeing them do crafts, seeing them play. And I'm like, okay, they're still learning.
They're still learning.
And it doesn't have to all fall on me. And they're learning what it looks like to care for a new baby. I'm not sending them away every day, and they're experiencing a brand new baby, and they're learning how to sacrifice because there's a new baby in the house. They're learning what that requires of a person to have a baby. And those are skills that they will need. Like they will absolutely need that. They might not need algebra, but they will need that.
Yes.
And so even just to see, my husband contributing and what that looks like and the roles of all of that. And so, that would be my advice, is to take a deep breath. And if there are some things your kids can continue on independently, fine. But if you need to put everything aside and just focus on play and good books and cuddling and experiencing that new baby, I think that's just as much education, and you should give yourself a break.
I 100% agree with you. I think it's freeing to know that it doesn't have to all, like you said, doesn't have to all fall on me. We forget that there are a lot of things that kids learn on their own. Like you don't have to teach them to walk. They're wanting to learn. They're hungry to learn. And so when you just provide an environment where they're loved and cared for, and lots of books, like you said, and books on tape, kids will learn whether you want them to or not. It's going to happen. It's not something you have to force. And home life provides so much opportunity. I think some high schools, they give you a fake baby. I mean, this is a good opportunity.
Yes, they do. Right. I remember doing that. And you take the fake baby home and you have to do all the things. Well, how about a real baby?
Yeah.
How about that?
It's funny though, because I get like, even people in my real life, like certain people in my family will say things and I'm like, it's so funny because I feel like you're just really brainwashed because you're cool with that. But when I say that I'm going to, we're going to do this for school, it's just like, you can't think outside the box just a little bit. And it's just.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then not to mention hundreds of years ago, into thinking about how they did education, and like they brought their kids out in the fields. They had a couple of readers. They were reading it maybe at bedtime, but like what else? Like that was their education. And they were, obviously I'm grateful that there is more opportunity now and there's different things, but even like apprenticeships or internships, or just thinking outside the box on what education is and what life at home could be and what we want for our kids. If we can just stop the crazy and like think about that for a minute.
Think about what's the goal? What is
the goal? What is success?
Sometimes we get so stuck in the whole like thing that we forget the goal. Like just think about, what do I need to accomplish by the time this child is ready to fly the coop? What do I need to, or leave the nest, or whatever the analogy is. What do I need to have them know? And I have enough time to do that. I believe that I have enough time, and I believe that it can happen very naturally. Mm-hmm. I also think, like you were saying back in the day, the things that people did, there was a lot more practical knowledge. Like there's a lot of stuff that these days people just don't know. Like we were having a discussion, one of my blog writers and I, and she was saying, like, should I put the eggs in the dairy category on your blog? She's like, I know eggs aren't dairy, but people think it is. And I'm like, no, they don't. And she's like, oh, trust me, they do. I'm like, no, they don't.
Please say
people
they don't.
do not think eggs are dairy. Okay. She's like, I mean, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but they do. And I'm like, well, that's just not good. Like, if we don't know this basic stuff, I don't like this.
Right. Yeah. That's hilarious. You're like, don't do it because you're just furthering the problem.
Yeah. And she wasn't necessarily going to, but she just wanted me to know that, like, yes, they truly do. People will ask that question.
They might be confused.
And I'm like, we got to know some practical stuff. Like at the very, least, like you said, the way our house goes together, how plumbing and electricity works, where our food comes from. These are how to care for a baby. What do you do when the baby cries? Yes. These are just practical life things that don't discount the value of those things.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to know more about your house. I want to know, what kind of things did you choose? Like what choices did you make that maybe most homes don't, in order to support your larger family, your homeschool? I want to hear.
Okay. So our biggest thing is that we wanted to live a lot of life outside. Okay. And we also wanted to create spaces to host people. So we love having big dinner parties, and we love having our homeschool community over and having opportunities for people to come sleep at our home. And so those were probably like the two main priorities, was like outdoor living, hosting people, and like having a big kitchen, because like everything starts at the kitchen, right?
Yes.
So we put our square footage in those spaces. We put our square footage in the kitchen, and then we put a lot of square footage on our porch. So we have a 3-sided wraparound porch, and the house plan was 8 feet on this porch, and we made it 10. Oh. So you can have like tables on every side of my house, if we had a big party, we could put out folding tables on like 3 sides of the house and have a massive amount of people be able to sit on our porch.
That's cool.
On the everyday, we have like a big table out there, and then we also have like a couch seating area. A unique thing we did was we actually got a double-sided fireplace. And so the fireplace goes into the living room, and on the other side, it's on the porch. It's the same fireplace.
Oh, out on the porch. That is cool. I didn't even think about that. Like, yeah.
So it's not wood burning. It's a gas fireplace, and there are like some regulations, and we had to do some tricky things to make it work. But yeah, so you can turn the fireplace on and be sitting outside or inside.
Yeah.
We also like expanded our kitchen so that our island was really, really big for lots of workspace and for the kids to kind of scoot up on bar stools while we're working in there and bring their math to the table while I'm trying to cook. And then we just kept our bedrooms really small. Instead of our square footage going into our bedrooms, we're like, hey, that's where we sleep.
Right.
We don't need massive bedrooms. I would rather have more spaces to have a lot of people gathering. And so the other thing is my husband and I both work from home, and with homeschooling, we wanted multiple like designated spots that we could sit and work, or we could sit and read, or we could sit and meet with a friend. Where it's quiet, where there's good internet service, where there's a plug. Instead of having like a massive great room, we have like a cozy living room, but then we also have like a study, and then we also have multiple spots on the porch. Then we have a guest room with a desk in it. So it's like these different spaces where kids could go off and bring their schoolwork. If they needed a quiet space, we could go and I could sit and podcast, so that we can have like this fluid space of working. Cause I didn't want just like an office, I wanted to have
same.
Yeah. Different, beautiful, inspiring spaces to sit and work. And then because homeschooling is what we do, we have a homeschool room that is downstairs next to the kitchen, because I have learned that you are not going to use a homeschool room that's far away from the main area of your house.
100%.
And my priority was it needs to be a quick run to the kitchen, or like the laundry and all the things that I do all day, and also access to outside. So basically we open that door to outside. We have one door open to like the kitchen area, one to outside. And we might do a lesson or two in the room, and then it'll be like, hey, you guys go play while these two do this. Mommy's going to go switch the laundry. I'll be right back. And so it's worked out really well, because it also is right next to the porch. And so far, since we've lived in the house, we've done school outside on the porch more often than in the room.
Yeah.
But having the room right there is helpful to be able to quickly grab our resources and things like that. So those are just some of the things that we've done specifically for our lifestyle. And I forgot one more thing is a library. We ended up making a library at the top of the stairs, because we just have books everywhere.
Oh,
and so it's still in process.
Place to stash books is such a problem around here.
Yeah, a place where they're going to be organized. We're doing built-ins all around a big window, and then like a bench seat, so there's a spot to sit, and the built-ins, and then there's like closed cabinets for board games. So just spaces to store games and books, which are like two of the things that we have the most of.
Yes.
For just like quick access, and also a place that they could somewhat be organized. So I'm hoping to my pipe dream is to alphabetize and all of that, but we'll see. Ask me again in a year.
Oh boy. Oh man, I like the place to stash the books. Not that. That would be oh man, that'd be so hard. But I also don't feel like my people are organized enough to keep up with that. But I love all your ideas, like that outdoor life. And then also, I'm with you on the bedrooms. Our bedrooms in this house are way too big. It's just the way this house was originally designed. But I would prefer to give more square footage to the places you said, like the kitchen for sure, the living space, the outdoor space, and then we can just stash kids at night in a small, tiny room would be fine with me.
Exactly. And also the toys. I don't want toys in their rooms. Just toys everywhere. And so we don't even want toys in their room. So they don't need, we put their bed in there. And even with a small room, I'm like, well, what else?
Yeah. You don't
need anything else.
Yeah.
No, because they have a built-in closet for their clothes, because I didn't want dressers so things could pile up. So we did built-in closets. So literally we have a bunk bed and closets. And I'm like, well, now you have some floor space if you want to lay around on the floor.
Yeah.
But you don't need anything else. So
yeah, I would prefer more rooms, maybe, but less space, because there's certain kids that it's so much easier if you can divide them. Like I want the toddler on his own. I want the baby on his own.
Yeah.
But then I want like the big boys, they could all four. Well, I'd prefer like the two big boys and the little two boys separate and then the girls. And so I'm like, man, I would like 6 small bedrooms instead of 3 massive ones, but it depends on ages of kids too.
And it changes. It's always changing, right?
It's always changing. Yes. And that's absolutely true. But I think that that's neat to take your approach to your life and then just design around that because it's a unique life that we live. You and me both having our husband's home, our kids' home. There's so much home life that you get keenly aware of how it would work better with the way your space is set up.
Usually because you're frustrated about things.
Yeah.
That's how you figure out what you need.
Yeah. You're just too in it. You're there all the time. You think about a lot. Like you said, with the workspaces, that's one thing we kind of lack here. I never wanted an office for either of us because I do my work in the house, but it's hard to find a quiet spot. It's very difficult. And very little of my work requires very quiet time. But the times that it does, it's like, well, where do I go? There's really nowhere that's, very quiet. But that'd be cool if given the opportunity to design a house.
And so then you made your little podcast shed. Is that true?
Well, I have a cottage, but this time of year it gets, we actually have a roofer, like, you know how things are. You hire somebody and then they come like 5 years later, but we're supposed to be getting a new roof because it's not insulated enough. And so the AC can't keep up with it. And so it's really bad in there in the summer. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Well, tell the listeners where they could find you, what you have to offer. You have so much practical advice. I know that you have a big Instagram and that's where you show up a lot, but what else would you like them to know?
Yeah. So we have a blog where I'm sharing at least once a week, practical tips for home education, but also just home life, home rhythms. We talk a lot about life skills and ways to implement all of these things we've been talking about today. As far as our curriculum, we have a Bible curriculum that's created for the whole family. We have a nature study that's seasonal. So we have one for every season that really dives into fun topics for each season and incorporates poetry and art study and living books and hands-on connections and nature walks, things like that. It's a really gentle guide, just open and go for all ages. And then we also have a Christmas and an Easter study. We have a lot of resources for before your kid is ready for homeschooling, those early years, the preschool years, just some really fun ways to introduce them to letters and numbers. So lots of resources over there. You can find all of that at treehouseschoolhouse.com. And if you find anything that you just can't live without, we have a code for you, Simple Farmhouse Life 15. We'll get you 15% off of your purchase.
Yay. Yeah. Well, that's very nice of you. I appreciate that because so many great resources and so many moms I think should follow along with you just for if they're needing encouragement, because I really feel like a weight lifted off after talking with you so many times, because we need constant reminder that if it feels so hard, so overwhelming, and there's no joy in the learning, then we need to do something different. And I think that that's the best thing to follow along with you for, is to constantly have that reminder and encouragement. So definitely go head over to Treehouse Schoolhouse and follow along with Lyndsey, because she offers a lot of that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again.
Right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast.